I will call this meeting of the Municipality of Bainbridge Board of Ethics to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Ms. Pearson?
Here.
Mr. Goldstein?
It's Goodstein.
Goodstein, sorry.
Here.
Goodstein. I believe, is it Miss Kelly? I'm sorry.
Mr. Kelly,
Mr.
yeah,
Kelly, I'm
here
just
he
filling
is.
in. Okay.
Not here yet.
here. Miss Mogado?
That's correct. Here.
Okay, and Mr. Teagarden?
Here.
You have quorum.
Perfect, thank you. First on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do I have any changes or concerns with today's agenda?
You need a motion.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve? If there are no concerns we'd like to discuss.
I move to approve.
Any discussion? Oh, sorry, in a second. Yeah, second. Second, all right. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approval of the agenda as drafted? Aye?
Aye.
Excellent, all right. On to approval of minutes of the previous meeting. Does the board members need a moment to review? Or are we ready to make a motion?
I need a motion to approve.
Okay. For a motion?
I move to approve last meeting's minutes.
In a second?
Second.
Okay, second, Mr. Teagarden. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes of the meeting of April 20th? Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. All right, on to the consent agenda. I would say the only thing I saw in the consent agenda is the one request that concerns the Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Realty conflict, and the fact that I think that we potentially should pull that one out. This is
Which one is that?
Mr. George.
Missed that one.
I know we have a parallel,
George.
William D.
William
George.
Page 9.
It's on page 9 of the
Page
non-confidential
9.
packet.
Oh, okay.
And I know we have a parallel, I think, complaint for potential violation that addresses a similar, essentially the same fact pattern involving a different individual. So I would recommend we don't approve this as part of the consent agenda, but pull it out for potential consideration. For further consideration, I think we'll need to speak with Mr. George and do a more in-depth review of this one. Everything else to me looked fine, unless others see issues.
Yeah, that's the only issue that I see as well.
I may look at the code for what it says about procedurally. Like, I'm inclined to almost treat this as a request for an advisory opinion, but I think we may have a framework just to consider this as a further consideration of a disclosure of an economic interest. Maybe Megan or Paul, do either of you have an opinion on what the procedural framework would be for our consideration of Mr. George's request for further advice from the Ethics Board regarding his disclosure?
It seems appropriate to treat it as a request for an advisory opinion because that can be made personal to the inquirer under 1.15.150A.
Sorry, Megan, can you say that? Where the code is again?
Yes, it's 1.15.150A. It talks about public servants may request an advisory opinion regarding the applicability and interpretation of this chapter related to actions, rights, or conflict personal to the inquirer.
Yeah, the challenge is we're really operating right under 115-100B2B, right? That if this requirement is not met, the public servant may request additional review by the Board of Ethics. So effectively, that's the framework through which we're feeling this request, right? As opposed to as specifically as a request for an advisory opinion.
So we're saying the requirement is not met.
Well, we're saying that, I think that he's saying he does have two conflicts, right? He's got this conflict with respect to the Federation of Community Councils.
Right.
He believes that can be managed.
I think we could contact him and see if he's fine with us, treating this as a request for an advisory opinion essentially, because we've got some, additional questions.
I think that makes sense. I think if you'd be willing to take that on,
Yeah,
Megan, and then ask him, Mr. George, to join us at our next meeting to answer some further questions.
Yeah.
That would be my request, and others had input on what to Mr. George's request.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
So we're gonna agree to the consent agenda with the exception of
Mr. George's request, which we will pull out for separate consideration through the framework of a request for advisory opinion.
Okay.
And we'll ask that staff reach out to Mr. George for next month's meeting.
So how do we make that to a movement?
So you move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of Mr. George's disclosure, and then the rest of it.
Yeah,
to
so I'd
ask
say
staff
I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of Mr. George's disclosure, where we would request that be scheduled for consideration at our next meeting as a request for advisory opinion. And we would ask that staff reach out to Mr. George to have him come and visit with us next month. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Excellent. Do I have a second? Second. Perfect. Any discussion of that motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Excellent, all right, so consent agenda is addressed. Megan, do you know the timing of our guests, when they're arriving?
Yes, Mr. Treadwell has said that he can be available from around 2 p.m. to 2:30. Deanna has said that she's available by phone. She's got some other things going on today, but she said that we can just contact her when we're ready for her.
Okay,
And Barbara Jones cannot join us today.
got it, okay, all right, perfect. Because our next, so let's proceed then to, at this point, we're not ready to, I guess, then consider our request for advisory opinions 2022-14 and 16 because we do not yet have our guests with us for discussion of in executive session. So I would say we move on to board policy on confidentiality, redaction, and distribution of board reports for discussion while we await the arrival of our first guest. Actually, although I guess we could go to D right now.
Yeah, we could call her if the phone was set up or.
We were having,
text
do you
her.
talk to us about the election commission?
Yeah, about request for advisory opinion 2022-14 and 16. Can remind the board that those are confidential, so we should go into executive session before we talk about those. Yeah, if that works, we have 20 minutes. Let's have a motion to go into executive session, and we'll speak with Ms. Ennis.
Or let me check with her first and see.
Okay.
Okay.
See if she could talk to us.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got 2014 here, 2017,
2016.
2217. I don't see 2216.
2016 is hiding under 2014
Oh,
or
great.
2014
Right.
under the same side.
Fine to 2016.
Yeah, it's in the confidential packet, and there.
Oh, yeah, I got it. Thank you. I got
Couple
it.
pages
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Oh, we have an actual folder. I have brought my own paper. I'm not even used to meeting in
It's
person
so,
today.
so fancy to have it.
But I
Packet
took
ready.
my own notes.
But I'm not sure how official you guys get when you jump around, if you move to
Yeah,
take
we
up the
surely
next
should have
item.
a motion to change the order of the day, but
So
I think we'll just proceed if she's
she's
available.
available.
All right,
Oh, great.
then let's proceed with, as scheduled, with request for advisory opinions 2022-14 and 16, which are confidential, so we need a motion to enter into executive session to take testimony.
I move that we enter into executive session. Second.
All right, any opposition? Hearing none, let's move into executive session. We're back in open session. I believe I need a motion to continue consideration of request for advisory opinions 2022-14 and 16 until our June meeting, and where we will hear testimony from our last invited guest and conclude our discussion. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So I'll second this one, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Any objection to that motion? Hearing none, that's how we'll proceed. So now we're on to the board policy on confidentiality, redaction, and distribution of board reports. If I'm remembering correctly, Paul, you gave it to us previously and we gave you feedback, and now we have a revised version before us.
Ooh, the fancy revised version.
Do I have comments, questions?
And the only two changes here were the footnote 1 on the bottom of page 19 that Terry had requested to outline that one exception that could apply. And then there was a grammatical change on the next page, changing when to if. And I did make another grammatical change just because I didn't want the signature to go onto an extra third page. But
Oh,
hopefully
got it.
Nice.
That didn't affect it anything. So.
Formatting choice,
I have no further edits or comments myself, other than thanks again to you, Paul, for your excellent work on this. And I'm grateful that we now have something in writing to look to and make clear on how we interpret the rules and apply them procedurally as within the board consistently. But others who may have questions, thoughts, concerns.
I thank you, Paul. This is great.
Does the board need
How-
more
how
time
do
to review?
How are you delivering this information?
We're just gonna put this on our website, right, and then make it publicly available, and I think we should, maybe when if people file a complaint, if we accept a complaint, or we, in response to a request for an advisory opinion, I would recommend we maybe circulate this, because I think the goal of this document was so that members of the public feel like we are clearly and consistently applying the same standards regarding confidential treatment, and that that's clear to them, and they're not surprised by someone, what happens in the process. So I guess that's a good question. What would we like? I think we have the freedom to make a recommendation about how we'd like to disseminate this information.
Yeah, I like the idea of putting it on the website, on the Board of Ethics website. I don't think there's any issues with that, as well
Great.
as, including it to the copy once we've accepted a complaint or request for advisory opinion.
Any other thoughts?
I did like the idea of as soon as someone's fills out, paperwork for it, so then they should get this immediately via email or however, so that every person who doesn't actually fill out a form has this document. Those
forms are routed through the clerk's office, correct? Is that the way they go? So is that a reasonable ask that the clerk's office might send this document in response to people who, or point them to the website link, or somehow make sure that people who file complaints are notified of the procedure and how it will play out?
I would think so, because I believe, when we get it do we get it as an email?
Not often notification. Most often it's dropped off.
It's dropped off, but we could just hand it out.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think either way, the clerk's office would be able to distribute this when they receive disclosure or some sort of filing.
I think that would be good, again.
Whether physically or
Right, either physically or by email.
Okay, thank you, yeah.
So I think that, no, I was gonna say, I think it would just be good to be able to, I agree with you, that they should, everyone should get this so that they understand. Yeah, just have the right expectations for the process.
Would it also be possible to even, maybe on the form for the request for advisory opinion, where they're checking, requesting confidentiality or waiving, provide a link that goes directly to where this is posted on the website?
Who controls the form? Do you guys control the form? No.
We do, yes.
Is that also a reasonable request? Can we ask to have,
I want to
you
say
wanna
yes, but
ask?
I'm not in charge of this board.
okay,
But most likely, I would think that that's
we'll
reasonable.
log that request.
Yes.
I think that's a good idea. Okay, do I have a motion?
What are we, what's the official action?
I think we're moving to adopt this as our policy, our board policy, and to request dissemination and distribution as discussed, which includes posting on the website, inclusion of the URL on the form, and provision of the policy to everyone who files a request with the board. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
Who wants to say so moved? I'll say it, so moved.
Second.
Thank you for doing this, making this easy for us.
Let's try it. All right,
I was gonna attempt it, but.
I
any
know, right?
objections? I'm just gonna stop. I'll let you guys can go forward. Any objections to the motion? Hearing any objections? All right, hearing none. I think we've adopted that. Thank you again, all, for your work on that. I think this is really a good change and improvement of the transparency of our process. All right, so then we're on to the Board of Ethics Annual Report for 2022.
So, I've been on this board for, I think, for 2 years now. I don't remember we're at 2021.
I think the board did not do it. The code does require that the board complete
Okay.
an annual report.
2017 is
My
the last.
understanding
Oh, no.
is there was some, apparently it's when I left the board last, all your schmoes went off into the,
Oh, no. We're in the wilderness, if you will.
I blame Carrie.
Yes,
For his
great. He's not
chairmanship,
here.
yes.
So
But
perfect.
nothing.
Yes,
I mean, my understanding, honestly, I talked about it with Jennifer, she said she felt like during COVID at least that kind of stuff got derailed because there
Ah,
was
that
so
makes
many other
sense.
things happening, but we're back, we have to do it. It's in the code that says the board shall produce an annual report, so here we are. I had one question about numbers, which was that, and the numbers on page 5, which is page 25 of the non-confidential packet, state that we had 8 advisory opinions and 12 ethics complaints in 2022. And the numbers, if you go down to page 27, where there's the table, relay that we had 10 ethics complaints in 2022 and 7 requests for advisory opinion. And I think the issue is how we're treating the requests that were filed in the previous year, because that's the note on page 25.
I tried to put that in the parentheses there. So the first set of numbers is really dealing with the board's workload, like how many complaints did the board review during the year. So there was, for example, 12 ethics complaints that the board had addressed during the year, and that includes the 2 complaints that were filed in 2021. And then later in the report, it's getting into statistical analysis between years. So then we're only looking at how many complaints were filed each year.
Maybe
as
we could
opposed to
make the language, because if you look at the language, the introductory language on page 7, it says the below chart compares the workload of the board the last 3
Oh,
years, so it
right.
kind of uses the same framework.
Right,
So
yeah.
maybe we could just make the introductory language more clear, like the number of requests filed and like caveat that not considered, just to, because it felt like, when I read it, I was like, it feels like we made a math error. I absolutely get your understanding, but it seems like others reading it may have the same.
That would be a good change.
Yeah. And then I had one other question about, on page 7, the notice of intent to respond to public solicitation by public servants. Said a public servant must file a disclosure form with the municipal clerk if they are a member of their immediate family household. Is that really the language in the code? Or is that, because we use, both of those terms are used in the code, but I think they're used separately. I haven't seen them used as a single item.
I think it was,
I'm just looking at this, I
Where is
think it's
that?
at 100, section 100, 115, 100.
Immediate family or household.
Yeah, immediate family or household, I think there's an or missing.
Man, that's a good catch.
Yeah.
It's only because we spend so much time talking about what an immediate family is. I think we like, because didn't we just redo that for the assembly guidance? Like,
Yeah.
do you have to disclose if it's like
That's
your
right,
aunt
yeah.
or your sister? Or like, does
Oh,
it
yeah.
matter if they live in the same house, or does it matter what the level of relation? We spent a long time on that, so.
We did,
And
yeah.
Carrie and I had a follow-up meeting with Dee about it, so
I know.
I'm sensitive to the definition
Immediate
of
family.
immediate family or household and whether they are the same or different.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a good catch. That's just a typo there.
Those are the only things I had. Other
No, that's,
concerns?
obviously I didn't read it as closely as you did.
I was on a plane for a long time yesterday, so I got some reading done.
No, I thought this was nice. I'm glad that we do this.
All right. Well, would anyone like to make a motion?
I was gonna give it a shot.
Go for it, yes.
I'll probably mess it up, but.
That's
You're gonna
great,
do great.
it's okay, she'll,
All right.
he will tell you when you do.
I will stop, I can be quiet over here.
I move that we accept the 2022 annual report for the Municipal Board of Ethics as dated May 18, 2023.
Did I amend to, with the requested changes that we just discussed? Do I have a second?
Second.
I had to leave something for Greg.
Yeah, I told you, she'll tell you.
Just really want that or in there. Any discussion of the motion? All right, all in favor of approving this, the report? Aye. Excellent, and thank you, Paul, again for your work on this, really bringing us to the next level here.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the topic things.
And then next on the agenda, we have preliminary conversation regarding ethics complaint for potential violation 2022-17. Which I don't believe we have anyone coming in to talk with us today. I think this is on the agenda just for us to, oh gosh, maybe someone can remind me. I don't think we've accepted this. Have we accepted this yet?
I thought we
Did
did.
we?
I thought we did accept it at the
Is
end
it,
of
oh,
it.
actually, no, it's
Let's
probably
check
in the minutes from
Check the
last.
minutes, yeah.
So we can make sure that where we are procedurally.
Page 5 of the minutes.
Here we go. Accepted for investigation, but not the second. And the staff contact the complainant and respondent and invite them to meet with the board in June. Okay. So I guess my question for the board
Wait,
would be.
where are you reading that?
I'm looking at page 5 of the non-confidential packet. That's where in the minutes we have the documentation of what we did last month
Got
with
it,
respect
yeah,
to this
yeah.
item. 2022-17. I guess my question for the board would be, is there any preliminary discussion that would be worthwhile in executive session, or should we wait until we're able to speak with the complainant and the respondent in June
I would actually like to go to executive session.
and
I
discuss?
guess, yeah, so I moved to go to executive session.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we'll go into executive session to discuss 2022-17. Go
I'm
ahead.
gonna say that
Yeah.
it's 2:45 and you're back in open session.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. We're back in open session to place on the record that we completed disclosures of potential conflicts as a board in executive session. And I disclosed a past business relationship with 2 of the parties that are at issue in this complaint for potential violation. In the absence of a vice chair, the board will now proceed to take a vote with respect to whether there is any substantial conflict which was disclosed, which would preclude my participation in the discussion, deliberation.
Okay.
And I'll
So
remove
then-
myself from
So then we vote to,
direct me to participate or to not participate.
okay, so yeah, all right. So
Whether there's a conflict
Yeah, right.
or not a conflict.
Yeah.
but what's the official, how do you see the official action?
I would make a motion that based on the deliberation, there was no conflict of interest and she's allowed to participate.
Okay, second, and then we vote on it, right?
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Now I move.
Now anyone move to go back
Yeah,
to
and now I move to go back to executive session.
Second. All right, back to executive session. Thank you.
Still sorry to keep making you walk back and forth.
It's 3:11 and you're back in open session.
Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to continue ethics complaint for potential violation 2022-17 to next month, or
I think yes.
do I have a motion accordingly?
Yeah, I move that we postpone 2022-17 to next month.
Maybe
To have
continue.
Continue.
to continue next month, and to bring in our respondent complainant to talk to in person.
Do I have a second? Second. Any opposition to that motion? Okay, hearing none, that passes. That is continued to next month. And our last item on the agenda is request for advisory opinion 2023-01. I need to check and see if this is confidential or not. Maybe someone can tell me off the top of their head before we discuss it on the record. Oh, confidentiality is waived. All right, so we can discuss this one in open session.
That's not bad.
I'll start with disclosures. Any disclosures from the board regarding this request for advisory opinion?
One second, I don't.
No disclosure.
Oh, I thought that you said here. Sorry.
I will disclose that I am good friends with Mr. Thornley's ex-wife. I do not have any business relationships with him or with her, but I know Jean very well. It's a very small town. I guess because of disclosures, anyone you need to make a ruling about whether that is a substantial conflict. I'll step back again, allow for a ruling from the board.
How do we do this again? Since we don't have a vice chair, we just sit.
Well, let me ask you this right here. Is there anything in the relationship with his ex-wife that would cause you to have any preconceived opinions about this?
No, not about this matter at all.
I would move that the disclosure that there doesn't appear to be a conflict of it, and the chair be allowed to continue in the process.
Second.
Vote in favor?
Aye.
All right, excellent. Amen.
You're in.
Okay,
I
so,
don't think I need to have John Thornton here.
I would agree. I felt like I understood, this definitely seemed to me like a situation in which there could be a conflict because it sounds like he is an equity owner or at the very least a senior executive in a company that seems to have a direct economic relationship with this issue. But
Yeah, there's a lot of some technical terms here that I need help understanding. Could we move to invite Mr. Thornley to our June meeting, or do you think our June meeting's already too packed at this point?
Well, in our June meeting, we have the complainant and the respondent from our last complaint, and then we have the last witness with respect to our request for advisory opinion. So it does feel like it's very packed.
Maybe a July meeting?
I wonder if we might want to set a special meeting, if we can, in the next 3 weeks, like set a special meeting in the week after our June meeting to try and cover more material in June.
I don't think I'll be available that week.
Are there any weeks that are, summer gets challenging for
It
sure?
does.
Is our meeting's the 14th or 15th? No, and I won't be able to make the 15th meeting. Let's see. I'm away the 22nd. I could do the 29th of June if we wanted to set a special meeting then to cover any additional business.
I'll be out of state, but doesn't necessarily mean you don't do it.
Just for the record, there's apparently a recording of this meeting as well, if that would be helpful according to his request.
What if we sought to to extend the length of our June meeting? Could we do that?
The day of the June meeting is, what did you say again?
June 15th is, I think, what we are, right? Are we June, what are we, we're the 2nd, right, Thursday? Or are we the 3rd Thursday? Let's see what it says on our agenda.
Yeah, the agenda.
Tentatively June 15th, yeah.
Proposed to be.
No, June 15th is actually not good for me at all. I have jury duty that week.
Okay.
Maybe this would be
All right,
better
you
done
say so.
by email or some kind of
I think I mean,
scheduling.
we could, it feels like we could ask for him to come on the 15th. I think we could get through it pretty quickly, honestly, like it doesn't take a ton here. We just have to be very expedient in our time if we can't extend that meeting.
Okay.
I would also say that there probably, we should hear from some of the members of the Assembly's Enterprise Utility Oversight Committee who are concerned. I'd like to hear what their concerns are. Maybe they can shed some light.
Maybe we could reach out to Mr. Thornley and ask him if there is a specific member that's concerned, and then consider whether we want to invite them as well.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So I guess,
You know, the person who would be the best one to do this is, it appears, the port director who is with the Assembly's EUOC chair, vice chair. That might be the person who would have the best perspective there. So, anyway.
so it's still Steve Rebuffo?
Steve Rebuffo.
Yeah, it's still Steve Rebuffo. Okay. We could ask Steve to come and talk to us. Is that the will of the body to ask Mr. Rebuffo to come and speak with us?
Or because this is his own request, should we contact Mr. Thornley first to ask him who these others who are concerned are? Should we just reach out directly to Steve?
Well, it's either the chair or the vice chair. I would say let's ask Mr. Thornley if there's some way, if we know who the concern is coming from. And if it's anything more than, like sometimes the chair will just say, I'd like a ruling from the Board of Ethics because it's complicated. So if that's the case, then yeah.
Part of the problem appears that there's two companies, one of which is the company he's an officer for, that are part of a joint venture group that maybe we're part of the concern of the conflict is there's another company involved. So anyway.
So you're wondering if the other company in the joint venture is
Might
worried about it?
have a concern, I don't know, just because there's another company that's involved in it.
All right.
The other factor in this here is that I've worked in this area a little bit, and it looks like what they're doing is going to probably involve some future contracting of some technical work, which should probably be discussed at the same time, perhaps that what impact it might have on the future if he's on the commission, and if there's a future contract to be let, just so it's at least discussed and aware.
Okay. So it sounds like what we're zeroing in on is asking Mr. Thornley for which members of the Enterprise and Utility Oversight Committee we may want to speak with as part of our review, and then we can determine whether we'd like to talk with them as well, or just with Mr. Thornley. And we'll ask for Mr. Thornley to come and visit with us next month. Okay. We need a motion.
That's a good question. Do you guys normally accept?
No,
Requests?
requests for advisory opinion don't require an acceptance. We can't really turn them down. We can just advise that there is no conflict, but we don't, it's not the same thing as a,
So would your motion
Like
be
that's a
to continue review of
yeah,
the
we need to continue
advisory?
review next week and to
to-
request that staff ask Mr. Thornley to join us, and also ask him whether there are members of the assembly that we should speak with. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposition to that motion? Okay.
No.
In our last 10 minutes, I realize this is not on the agenda, but I would like to add an item to the agenda, which is the election of a vice chair. My term is up in October. This is part of the equation here, and I think at some point prior to that, I'm not sure whether I'll be reappointed. So I would like to step down from being chair at some point prior than October, so we have sustainability in board leadership, which in part means we need to have a vice chair in place.
I'm also up in October as well.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
things up in that. Yeah.
New members, would either of you be interested in being vice chair for organizational continuity?
Terry's in here, we can go on hold him.
When's Terry up?
You should let him record that.
25.
Show it.
Yeah, we can ask him, the other option is we could ask Terry in between. I'm reluctant to elect him in his absence, but we could ask him in between if he's willing to be vice chair. He has served many terms as chair. I know requested to step down because of his course load and his research load. But we could ask him if that's a little body, unless either of you would be interested in serving as vice chair.
I think, with knowing that the chair position is also gonna become available at some point sooner rather than later, it might be a good conversation to have with everybody here on kind of what they see it looking like and where they think they best fit in.
There's some level of urgency because I may not be able to attend next month's meeting, so we'll either have to cancel it, they'll have to cancel if there's no vice chair is able to facilitate in my absence. It's a challenge, but we can proceed with that and just not hear any matters in June if that's what we're able to do at this point. So, yeah.
I would move that Kelly be the vice chair.
Well played. I guess, is it a motion or is it a nomination? I think it's a nomination, you've nominated, so do you accept the nomination, Kelly?
I'll accept the nomination.
Okay. And generally being vice chair doesn't involve too much other than facilitation in the absence of the chair and not the indefinite expectation, but the potential for becoming the chair if you are so interested when the chair's position becomes vacant. That doesn't always happen, but.
However, if you are not available next month, I don't know how great that's gonna be.
I will endeavor to be available next month. I'm hosting a 3-day retreat for my department. I lead a geographically dispersed department. They come together for 3 days in June. I have that afternoon as open time on the agenda, but it's possible I may only be available remotely because I'm going to be at a retreat venue in East Anchorage. So
I do need a second.
yeah. Do we need to vote though? Do we need a second on the nomination? Okay.
I second.
All right. Do we need to vote? All in favor? Kelly as vice chair?
Aye.
Yay.
Mazel tov.
Congratulations, I'm vice chair.
You're welcome.
I don't know if it's a congratulations.
An illustrious position. I appreciate your service. Okay, with that, I do have a motion to adjourn.
I'm ready to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposition? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.